Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And good morning, good evening to anyone joined online remotely. Welcome to the session. My name is Huang. Thank you for joining the session. The purpose of the session is try to encourage all operators share their experience in terms of IPv6 deployment. And so how do they do? What kind of problem they experience and what kind of solution they deploy? What kind of business operation they do? And even they can share about the customer acquisition strategy as well. So thanks again for joining the session. Can I invite to all speakers who are on site can join the stage with me. So I'd like to invite the first speaker, Andrea Kaleka from RIPE NCC. He's going to introduce deploy IPv6 mostly access network. Let us welcome Andrea. Is he online?
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me, and I will just share my presentation. Yes. Okay. So I'm ready. Thank you very much for having me here in this conference, and I would like to talk about deploying IPv6 mostly access network, which is sort of a new term that is there since, let's say, last year or maybe two. And it's basically, in a nutshell, IPv6 only network and dual stack network in one network together. How exactly does it work? I will cover it in a moment. But first, let's talk about transition mechanisms, because that's what we do if we want to deploy IPv6. And we used to say that the best transmission mechanism is dual stack, which basically means that you have IPv4 just like you had, and then you add IPv6. And in this case, that means basically that IPv6 works completely separately. There is no common infrastructure. If IPv6 is not available, the resources are loaded over IPv4. If there are some problems with IPv6, there is this algorithm called happy eyeballs that is just masking these problems by switching fastly into IPv4. It works very well with one minor issue, and the issue is that it does not address IPv4 address scarcity at all. By deploying IPv6 with dual stack, you will not save any IPv4 addresses, so this will just not help with the fundamental issue of IPv4. Therefore, we have another solution that sounds much better. It's called Net64, which basically means that you can have IPv6 only access network and provide IPv4 only as a service over IPv6 network. In this case, the service is a translation. So basically, you take part of the IPv6 address space and translate it into IPv4. And whenever somebody wants to reach IPv4 only resource, they can do it via Net64. And together with DNS64, which is like a trick with DNS, the end device can have a feeling that everything is accessible over IPv6. So it doesn't have to care about IPv4 at all. It works well, except for some very well-known cases when it doesn't. For instance, if you type IPv4 literal in somewhere, then it of course doesn't use DNS, and therefore DNS64 will not work. There is also legacy software which doesn't do anything else than IPv4, it will not work. And there is also a problem with, is everything working? Yeah, with dual stack servers which are broken. Anyway, this solution is already very well used in mobile world. So mobile operating system vendors are trying really hard to make it work on IPv6 only, because the mobile carriers tend to deploy IPv6 only networks with Net64. So in case of Apple, they did this approach that they basically forced everybody since 2016 to have all apps working properly on Net64. In case of Android, it's they implemented a thing called 464 XLAT, which means there's a second translator called CLAT, which is inside the device. And this second translator basically makes it available that even end user apps with IPv4 only can work in such device, even though the network is IPv6 only. The problem is that desktop computers don't have such features. So if you have IPv6 only access network and you connect some Windows machine, for instance, it will work mostly, but there will be some small problems that are very well known. Most people will not notice them because they are quite small, but for some people this can be like showstopper. And as I said, like the legacy application that are using IPv4 only or IPv4 literals, or just, the problem is with happy eyeballs, the algorithm that allows us to quickly switch from IPv6 to IPv4 in case IPv6 is broken. This, of course, cannot work on a desktop that has only single stack IPv6 connectivity because there's nowhere to switch to. So the question that this talk is about to solve is, can we somehow do IPv6 only, at least for some devices? That means devices that are supporting it, like mobile devices, and not for the others that would suffer on it. And the solution that already exists, and it's very well implemented, is in RFC 8925. And it basically uses DHCP, the old protocol that is used for IPv4 address configuration. So this is IPv4 DHCP, not IPv6 DHCP. And there is a new option for this legacy IPv4 DHCP that is called IPv6 only preferred. And this option is numbered with number 108. I'm going to use number 108 because the name of the option is very complicated and it gets confusing very quickly. So first, how does it work when a client joined the network and regarding DHCP? This is pretty common. So first, the transaction starts with discover message, where the client lists what kind of parameters is interested in. And in case of client that is supporting this option, the client will also request option number 108. The DHCP server will respond with offer of parameters. And in this case, the server doesn't know anything about this option 108, so it doesn't offer such option to the client. And in this case, the transaction continues normally. So client will request the parameters and the server will allocate this request and acknowledge it. So in this case, the client asked for running IPv6 only, but the server ignored it. So the client got assigned IPv4 address like normal, and everything works like normal on dual step or even IPv4 only. Then what if the DHCP server is configured to respond with this option 108? In this case, for the discover message, there is offer message, and in this offer message, the option 108 is offered together with some time. This time, in this example, 30 minutes, and that basically means that the server is aware that the network where the device is connected is capable of running IPv6 only, and therefore it announces to the client that IPv4 does not have to be used for 30 minutes in this case. And the reaction of the client is that in this case, client will stop the transaction here. So the transaction is not finished because there are no message exchange. And it is like there was no DHCP transaction at all because it was abrupted in the middle of the transaction. And in this case, the device will just work on IPv6 only, and the DHCP pool will be one address bigger, let's say. The question here is, does this protocol get already some implementation? And the answer here is yes, quite a lot actually. It's in all new recent Androids, iOS, and pretty surprisingly also macOS, desktop operating system from Apple. Actually, 1 year ago in Berlin during RIPE 84, I did a measurement on the DHCP servers where I basically looked up how many clients are requesting this option 108. And I found out that 2/3 of devices in the network already request the option 108. Back then, the network was not ready for that, so the devices operated dual stack normally. But yeah, you can see that quite a decent number of devices is already using it. So let's say devices are ready, the networks are a little bit lagging behind. One more thing is about the Mac OS, because this is interesting in a way that Mac OS allows you to run any software. You are not tied to a particular app store like with iOS or Android. So you can run any software, and you can run even software that is, like I said, that is broken on IPv6 only networks. And it seems that this has been solved by Apple by implementing CLAT in macOS as well. So that means if you connect to IPv6 only network with macOS, there is CLAT engine inside that will get activated. It used to be only activated when the option 108 was present, and also when there was pref64 prefix option, but this is not the case anymore. Starting of macOS 13, it gets activated every time the network has NAT64, and at the same time, it has this disadvantage that if the network is pure IPv6 only, that means there is no NAT64, the macOS will refuse to use it. It will basically disconnect and says that this network doesn't work. So there is like now hard requirement that Apple devices have to be connected to network that supports IPv4, either natively or via a NAT64. Yeah, so this on the right hand side, you see this is how it looks when the CLAT is activated. I mentioned briefly the router advertisement option pref64, which is also another new thing. And basically, in case of setting up this CLAT, this translator inside the host machine, the CLAT has to be set up with the NAT64, and somehow it has to discover which IPv6 prefix is used for NAT64. And it seems that the most the best option how to do it is with the new option of router advertisement that is called pref64, and it's a very simple option that is just add to router advertisement. So whenever the net device receives the network configuration, it will also receive its NAT64 prefix information. And this option used to be required for the previous version of Apple operating systems in order to activate the CLAT. It's not the case anymore, but chances are that it can happen because this is a little bit more trusted than other ways of discovering a NAT64 prefix. Okay, let's now talk about, if you perhaps want to give this network a try, how exactly you could run such a network. First of all, you need DHCP server that supports the option 108. And surprisingly, this is very easy, because first of all, there is native support in Kia from ISC. So if this, in this case, you can just configure it, that's easy. But even if you use different DHCP server, as long as this DHCP server supports custom options, you can create option 108 by defining a custom option, because there is no requirement for any special handling of this option. So any like 20-year-old DHCP server that supports custom option can do it. There's an example with DNS mask. Yeah, the only thing is that if you still have to have addresses in pool of IPv4, because if as soon as the pool gets depleted, the service will stop responding with the offer. So even though the address is not needed at the end, it will not work without at least one free address in the DHCP pool. Regarding the option pref64, it's a little bit harder, because in general, routers don't support custom array options. Every time there is a new option standardized for router advertisement, it requires firmware update for that particular router in order to support it. So this is really painful. We already had this issue with recursive DNS server option, which was already put there later, and now we have the same problem again, and we probably are going to have it again. So I would really like to see vendors picking up with some standard of custom options for router advertisements, so a new option can be used without requiring like complicated software upgrade. There is some adoption. There are some patches for software routers or pull requests. There is also beta of MikroTik router OS added support to this option. So it is slowly happening, but unfortunately, yeah, there are still many routers that don't support it. Also, if you run it on Mac OS, there are some interesting, let's say, features or maybe even bugs. First of all, there is this thing that if your network has more than one network prefix, the CLAT engine will choose one basically randomly. So in my case, there's a ULA prefix and there's global unicast prefix, and the CLAT engine picked up the ULA prefix to be used for the CLAT. So this probably is not expected behavior, and something, yeah, this probably should be, there should be probably the global unicast address used, but in the end, most of the time it doesn't really matter because probably most of the networks use only one prefix there. Another interesting thing is that the CLAT engine in Mac OS does not work for all applications. For instance, it does not work for DNS resolver. So if you have custom settings of DNS server and you set up IPv4 address for DNS server, it will not work, despite that you can ping that address. You can even use command like host that will resolve using that address. But if you try to connect to some domain name, it will tell you that unknown host, that DNS doesn't work because the DNS resolver itself does not work over the CLAT engine, so cannot work with IPv4 literals. Yeah, so that's basically it. If I wrap it up, this approach of having both IPv6 only and dual stack in one network, the main advantage is that there are no two networks, only one, so people are not confused which network to join, and there will be no, with the growing number of mobile devices, there will be no growing number of consumption of your DHCP pools, or you have to expand your address ranges because of that, because most of the new devices will just work without IPv4. This is especially good if you don't use NAT for IPv4 and you are using public addresses, then you have very big problem with more and more devices. Also, because the dual stack uses DNS 6.4, it means that even in dual stack, the use of IPv4 will be minimal. Most of the traffic will go translated via Net 6.4. So this is like on the positive side. On the negative, this network is the most complex network because it has everything from dual stack network plus everything from IPv6 only network. So you still need to deploy IPv4 everywhere. So there is no like direct saving of IPv4 addresses because you still have to have it deployed for the devices that don't support IPv6 only. You also need Net 6.4. So in case you don't have any net solution, you still have to deploy Net 6.4. And yeah, there are some problems with interoperability. If you have one device that is running dual stack and other that is running IPv6 only, chances are that they just cannot talk to each other. In my case, it was if I tried to set up Chromecast from an Android phone. So Android phone work on IPv6 only, Chromecast worked on dual stack, and they just were not able to see each other. So to wrap it up, when you should consider IPv6 mostly, I came up with these options. So basically, if you don't use NAT and your DHCP pool is filling up, or if you do use NAT, but you are even running out of private addresses because you are like very big network. If your network has mostly Apple devices or mobile devices, and if you already have Net 6.4 and would like people to use it more, and if you would maybe even consider to undeploy IPv4. So these are the most options when this makes sense, in my opinion. And because with RIPE meeting network, that we do for our meetings. We basically check most of these bullets here. We don't use NET, and our DHCP pool is filling up. There are mostly mobile devices there, and we already have NET 6.4. We tried and we deployed it during our last meeting, 85, and we actually did also deploy other networks, and the numbers were pretty good. So in the end, 74% of devices were using IPv6 only. The biggest issue we found out was that Mac users have set up custom DNS servers, therefore they had no DNS and therefore nothing worked for them. Or even we found some Mac device that had this disabled IPv6. And of course, if the network is disabled IPv6 and there's IPv4 is disabled by DHCP option, then there's nothing to connect to. We saw still some Apple users that connected to legacy network instead of the IPv6 mostly network. And the only thing that we observed as an issue was that Cisco AnyConnect or even OpenConnect, open source variant, didn't want to connect. But on the positive side, something that I was really worried about was our printer. That is a network printer which supports Apple AirPrint over dual stack. And it indeed worked very well, even with IPv6 only devices. It printed without any issues. So I think this is like very interesting standard, and I would really like you to consider this maybe first as an experiment, and maybe it could be the way forward how to finally get rid of dependency on IPv4. And with that, I'm finished. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. And any other question from the floor? Okay, any question from online? Okay, hearing now. Thank you, Andrea. And actually, we do prepare some valuable gift to speaker, but unfortunately, you are not here. So I probably just keep it for you, and you can collect from me next time if you can find me. Okay,
thank you very much.
Welcome the next speaker, Kems from Akamai. He is going to introduce a CDN provider perspective on IPv6 in 2023. Let's welcome Kems. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So I'm Kems, one of the network architect in Akamai. So today I'm going to talk about from a CDN perspective, what we observe on the IPv6. So this is more about the trends, data that we observe. Do I have a kicker or?
Yes, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, so I just want to talk about a brief history about Akamai, IPv6. So we have been doing IPv6 since 2011. So the first time that we implement this, and we have been deploying IPv6 not only on the server to client. We also do a lot of IPv6 like internally for our security, for our compute, and also of all the products, DNS. So we also support a full stack of IPv6 as far as possible. And we have been always encouraging our customer to do dual stack since a long time ago. And nowadays we do dual stack by default. However, there are also some customer that remains on IPv4 only for their own reason. So some high-level statistics is we are doing peak IPv6 traffic now for the whole network about 47T versus total dual stack IPv4 plus IPv6 is about 250 terabit per second. So that is like 1/5 of our traffic is now about IPv6. And we have IPv6 deployment in like over 120 countries and 650 cities. And this is a growth that you can see the trend over the last 10 years. So these are statistics we collect last year. So you see that in 2012, this is the World IPv6 launch. Of course, we are one of the members well at the time. So the peak IPv6 is barely just 1 gig because we only have like maybe a handful of 1,000 host names that are V6 enabled. And at that time, 10 years ago, of course, there's not a lot of IPv6 device at that time, you can imagine. But still, we got about 3.9 billion of requests per day. And IPv6 address observed, I mean, the end user address that we observe is about 19 million. So that is like the IPv6 population 10 years ago. And you fast forward, like looking after 10 years later, that is last year, we are doing a peak traffic of 41T. And the daily request nowadays coming from our CDN servers become 4 trillion per day. And the IPv6 address the observed, that means kind of like the IPv6 population is like 7.5 billion. So you can see that, of course, this 7.5 billion is, of course, a lot of different starter box, right? So if you look into 64 prefix, we observe like 2.2 billion, which is a huge exponential growth. I mean, if you compare on the last 10 years, of course, there's a lot of driving factors on that. So we go to look into why we see this traffic. Number one is IPv6. I think everyone knows that definitely is more scalable in terms of the address space. So a lot of ISP and carrier, when they have to grow their network, especially like mobile operators, definitely they have to shift to IPv6. Of course, there's some mobile operators that nowadays they do IPv6 only. And nowadays, you can see that more and more IT compute application are moving to cloud. And if you want to spin up a VM, and when you need up so many machines on the cloud, then you need IP address for them, right? So you can imagine that cloud is more getting more and more popular, and each of all these virtual machine on the cloud need an IP address. So that's, if you don't have a V6 enabled, you can't get into a very large scale deployment. So that's also one reason. And IPv6 definitely simplifies the address management. Even you do private IP, you have to do NAT or NAT and NAT, carrier NAT. So there's a lot of management that you have to do if you do private address space. If you do zero trust security, IPv6 flat IPv6 space is also easier for compared to V4. And if you go direct to V6, you will find that it's easier to manage because you don't need to manage two stacks, V4 and V6. You just manage V6. Of course, externally you still need some translation. I think the previous speaker have talked about that. And IPv6 also enable you to have a lot of new service that you can create in terms of the bound by the V4 restriction. Of course, V6 actually also have a better performance. So we have a lot of statistics showing that because IPv6 will allow you to bypass the carrier grade NAT or translation device. So that actually have a better performance when you compare V4 to V6. Of course, there are also a lot of driving factors because a lot of government trying to have policy that enable, or at least from the government department, that they have to enable V6. So we see a lot of government have this kind of mandatory requirement. And some, of course, even push down to even become a national goal if you read those government news. So here are some trends that we observe for the IPv6 adoption. We only select the top country here that if they have a IPv6 adoption over 40%. So IPv6 adoption in Akamai mean number of IPv6 requests that we observe versus total. So if you see from a country perspective, if you see the request coming is V6, we see that there are 15 countries that they have IPv6 adoption more than 40%. So this is the list countries here like Belgium, Brazil, France, etc. And from a network perspective, there are half of about 15 network that have a IPv6 adoption of over 40%. And you can see the the growing trend here. So I'll just list the top 10 country here that they have a IPv6 adoption of over have a high growth of that. Next, you can see this is an overview of IPv6 adoption, but we tap it into number of networks. So you can see that about approximately like 50 network, they will have a lot of about 80% of them have a V6 enabled. If you look into like 800 networks, the top 800 network in the world, about 20% of those have 40% adoption. So you can see that we see a lot of large network, they tend to have a higher V6 adoption because those large network usually are those large mobile operators, and mobile operators have more need for IPv6 address. So that's why the adoption is here. You can see this here. And if you zoom into Asia, so these are the Asia country of the percentage of V6 that we observe. They have a IPv6 adoption rate of over 5%. So Asia is very country by country, but you can see that some are very high, like India or like Malaysia. So they are like 59, 58%. There are also some country that catching up. So like Pakistan and Singapore and Mongolia. So they are catching up on that. So it's really very by countries that and now if you look into we zoom down into Philippines since we are here. So this is the what we call SOTI. SOTI is like state of the internet report. You can check it on our website as well. So we measure the V6 adoption in a map format that you can click into, like which country have a higher provider, how about V6 adoption. So we found that Philippines, this data I think we just captured this morning, is 15.7%. But this is talking about the whole Philippine user. And then if you look into the trend for Philippines, they have been starting quite a big jump since like mid 2020, 2000, and they reached to now is about 15.7%. And in terms of country ranking, they are 61st in terms of the ranking. Not that bad, but that could be better. And the way that we observe the IPv6 adoption is by IPv6 request versus total request. There are other measurements, like so we can benchmark with like Google and APNIC. They also do their own IPv6 measurement. So by Google is measured by, for Philippines, they see 16.91. And APNIC, we see 13.28. Of course, this is because we measure differently by different measuring mechanism, but you can have a reference on about the Philippine IPv6. And the major V6 in Philippines that we observe is Dito, telecommunity. That's because, you know, they are a emerging new mobile operator. So I mentioned that mobile operator, they have a more urgent need for V6 because they're new, so they can't get much IPv4. So that's why when they deploy, they have to be more rely on IPv6. And next after Dito will be PLDT. PLDT, of course, they also have a mobile arm smart. So that's why they also have a very high V6. So you can see the provider breakdown again on our website. So I don't list them all here, but this just gives you a bird's eye view on how V6 is doing in Philippines. And come back to Akamai, we have been doing dual stack content since 2011. So you can see that the number of host name, I mean, for the top 100, so for top customer, they have 1 million requests per day. So we are looking into how many dual stack content that we are serving for the top customers. So you can see the trend is like on like 2015 is not that much of our content, customer content on dual stack. But now you see the trend because on and off we have new customers, right? And by default, new customer will be default on dual stack. If a legacy customer, they are on V4 only. So it's need customer to agree for us to migrate them to dual stack. So this trend is number one is because of new customer coming up, but default V6, but default with dual stack. And the other two is we are also converting some of the existing legacy customers because V4 only to dual stack. So we expect that this keep going up. So a lot of more and more Akamai content will be on dual stack. So you that see I mentioned that not all Akamai content today are dual stack because of different reasons. So number one is when we start to do we dual stack default, there are some legacy customer that they don't move and we can't force them to move. And so they can have an option to hey, I only want v4 only. It's up to the customer choice. We provide that flexibility. But then some customer have an impression on if they turn on v6, then there's a performance hit because they think v6 adoption is still not that high, and they think that may have a performance issue, but actually not the case. So that part, I think we need more education on that. And of course, there are also some customer their backend system can only process v4, like the log system or their application. So they can't support v6. Then that means we have to keep their content only on v4. So this also relate to how customer integrate in their backend. So I just want to repeat again why we need to why we are moving to v6. Number one is v6 is much more scale, much more address space. Is enable the carrier network and the cloud provider to growth. It simplify all the address management, so we get rid of all the NAT, carrier NAT. It's also provide you a more flexibility to create new service. And some government regulation policy-wise also mandatory to enable v6. So these are the driving force that why we at Akamai have been pushing so hard to v6. And that's all my presentation. If you want to learn more about the Akamai IPv6, you can go to this website. And this slide actually, I got most of the material from my colleague Eric Yun. So he have a blog about a very much more detailed blog about what we have been observing over the last 10 years. Not only about specific for Akamai, but it's also like what have been happening in the IPv6 world. So you can look into the link for more information. And if you have any questions, comments, you can ask me now, or you can send me an email. So my email is there. I think that's all my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Kims. Any question from the floor? And say your name, organization. Thank you.
Yes, it works. Hello, Jan George from 6Connect. Do you maybe have any recent graphs or measurements or numbers? How much does the performance of the reaching the content over IPv6 increase? Because I know Akamai publicly shared some numbers years ago, but I didn't see any recent numbers or measurements. Do you have any newer information?
I think I could send some information to you, but the performance difference between v4 and v6, I just don't have this off my head, but I can follow up with you on that. Yeah, it's not a very big difference, but this depends on the network. So let's say if the network, if you can have a v6 server talking to a v6 client, the performance will be better than a v4 server go through a translation and talking to a v6 user, for example, or talking to a v4 user, but via NAT. So because sometimes we see there could be a performance bottleneck on the carrier grade NAT. So it's not like a generic. Sometimes it could be like different network of different setup. So we found that we'll try to talk with the provider to see whether we can bypass the carrier NAT, because sometimes you just forgot to enable v6, for example. So we have to go through the NAT. So in general, I think if you could do direct v6 to v6 server to client would be always better than any translation or NAT box in between. That's the performance gain that we observe.
Yeah, because I remember Facebook saying that they measured even 30% of better, of faster reachability of the content over IPv6 for some networks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you are seeing somewhere numbers like this.
I don't think it's that drastic. I mean, from our measurement, okay, it's just more like you go through less layers. So it's more like from in terms of latency or potential carrier grade NAT device capacity that cause the problem. So cause like more like delay on that. So it's not I would not say 30%, but I don't know where metadata come from. But the data that we have is just a bit more subtle. But so that's why yeah, it's still better. But
Thank you.
Okay, next.
Jordi Paulette, I think I have a point about the question from Jan. I recall Eric Nigren presented already similar measurements as the ones done by Facebook, and it was like 30% improvement or 30 something. So probably it's online, we can find it.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other question online? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Ken. Before you left, I give you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, let's invite next speaker, Adobe Alava. He's from Global Telecom. He's going to introduce Global Telecom IPv6 deployment. Let's welcome him.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adalbert Aslava, or Al. You can call me Al from Globe Telecoms. This would be just a short presentation. It's not necessarily a Globe entirely adoption of IPv6, but it's an operations perspective as I see it from where I sit in Globe in the operations department. Okay. How it started with Globe around 2011. I understand there was a global an IPv6 connectivity that was being presented, and Globe was a part of that World IPv6 Day. As soon as July, I think, of 2011, we started to configure IPv6 mainly on our core routers, as it was the where we think is the best position for us to start the IPv6 journey before deploying it in anywhere into our customer edges or to customer networks and services. The current status right now is as you can see here, we have the snapshot from bgp.he.net. We see that we already have IPv6 prefixes being announced into the network, and we also have IPv6 peers. We started to grow the network on the right side graph. We can see that we have the APNIC statistics on the start of the announcement of IPv6 addresses from our network AS4775. Okay, so on the deployment of IPv6, the question that is always being asked of us networks is that, are we there yet? Have we already fully transitioned into an IPv6 network? And that begs the question is, when do we really say that we have already reached an IPv6 transition? Is it when there are no more IPv4 addresses to be allocated to customers, or is it when all services are already serviced by IPv6 and not by IPv4? And for our network, we can say that no, that's not yet the case. We still have IPv4 in the network, definitely. We are only running dual stack right now on our networks. The start of the deployment actually for the customers started with our mobile networks, because that's where we feel that we can easily deploy and have the biggest impact into the announcement of IPv6 addresses into the network. After we deployed into the mobile networks, as you all know, we also have the broadband networks. We also have deployed IPv6 already on the broadband network, but again, on a dual stack topology currently right now. Okay. So this is the current status. We have IPv6 in the network coexisting with the IPv4 network. Some early challenges, I might say, for the deployment of IPv6 in the networks is that, again, for the operations perspective, we do have to look after how we maintain those networks, right? It is important that we are able to support whatever the network we put into, that whatever technology or new segments that we put in. So we feel that competency development is one of the challenges we found on the early stages. It's fortunate also that we receive a lot of help from our friends from APNIC. They have come here for some workshops and some training materials and training our team for IPv6 adoption. From 2011 to currently, they have been working with us, most definitely with the local NOGs, the PH NOG, where they conduct workshops for us. For me, the next challenge would be compatibility, of course. Globe has been a well-established telecommunications company before IPv6. And we feel that to be able to transition, we have to look after the all the network elements that are already in the network, making sure that they are all able to support IPv6 when we do decide to deploy them, right? So there's a little bit of hesitance from management as well as from the operations department as well. Just making sure that we do not break the network when we do deploy IPv6. Of course, there are older equipments that needs to be considered. Then all the way from the routers to the CPEs, as well as other backend systems that we have in the network. Like I said, previously we only deployed on the core networks, but then if we have to go into a full deployment of IPv6 into the network, we also have to consider the backend systems. We have the billing systems, or else we break the service flows into our network. I wrote here also number 3 is customer pushback. Customer pushback mostly also related to number 1 and number 2. Of course, our customers also have legacy equipment in their networks that has to be able to support IPv6 if we do push for an IPv6 native connectivity. That is the reason why we still have dual stack configurations into the network. And still, there are enterprise customers mostly who still wants to deploy IPv4. They are still requesting us to provide them with IPv4 actually, even though the network is already say dual stack. The preference is still at IPv4. Again, on this area, we thank our team from APNIC, who has been also trying to convince or to educate our customers into transitioning fully into IPv6 and to get with that transition with us. The last one I put into the challenges would be the network monitoring. Okay, from an operations perspective, again, I have to reiterate that we have to be able to maintain the network at this performance that we'd be able to support our services, right? So in terms of monitoring, we have to make sure that we have the necessary tools to monitor traffic, because we understand that the network status would have a great impact into the application performances that are being served into our network. If we are unable to say monitor this traffic and we do not have visibility from an operations from the NOC department, then we say that we can be blinded with the actual status of the network, and we might be providing suboptimal services to our customers. Also, part of the network monitoring that we tried to consider when we tried to transition to IPv6 was that we have to be able to have configuration management visibility as well. As we know, when we have dual stack, we are almost like running 2 networks at the same time, one IPv4 and one IPv6. And as long as these 2 coexist in the network, we have to make sure that we have visibility into those 2 networks, and we have the ability to maintain and operate those systems efficiently. So like I said, it would be a short presentation. This is a perspective from the operations on how we deploy IPv6 on our network from Globe. Thank you.
Thank you, Adobe. Any question from the floor? Any question? Or any question online? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Adobe.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I give you a gift. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you can stay on stage. So let's welcome the next speaker, Mohammad Gimho Jinne. He's from Dito Telecommunity. He's going to introduce Dito Telecommunity IPv6 deployment. Let's welcome him. Thank you. Yeah. That's great.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Kim Junaide from Dito Telecommunity. So I'm here to present the Dito IPv6 deployment. Okay. So just a brief introduction of who we are. So way back 2018, our government requested to have another mobile operator here in the Philippines. So they have conducted bidding and Dito won that. So by then we were named the third major telecommunications provider here in the country. However, of course, since we are new, we need to build our network from scratch. We just had commercially launched last March 2021. And we were known as ASN 139831. Okay. So why Dito pushed for IPv6? So as Cams mentioned a while ago, we are a new mobile operator. So we were only allocated a small chunk of IPv4. And we aggressively push for IPv6 for us to serve the population here in the Philippines. As our commitment is to provide to cover 85% of the different islands in the Philippines. As you know, Philippines has 3 major islands, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, with a population of over 100 million. So a lot of users, subscribers to cover with. Of course, as IPv4 getting depleted, so we need to ensure, since we are the new mobile operator, we need to ensure that our network is a future-proof one. So we need to ready our network for the upcoming challenges of IPv4. And since the technology is fastly emerging, so in the near future, we believe that we will be getting rid of IPv4 and moving to IPv6. At least by that time, our network is ready to support such demand. So what are the challenges we have faced during our deployment? Of course, from our perspective, since we are the new mobile operator, on a highly technical perspective, we already considered IPv6. Yes, because of the wide range of IP address we need. However, one of the challenges is the high investment on the equipment. So not only on our core equipment, but also on the monitoring equipment. This is for us to gauge what is the common traffic passing through our network. Is it IPv4 or IPv6? And then another challenge we face is the technical experts. So we need to find experts for us to be able to deploy IPv6 smoothly. And of course, we need technical experts who have already experience in deploying such protocol, because we need to catch up with the demand of our government. So we need technical experts. And after the implementation, also we need, there's another challenge on that, additional trainings for our operations team. This is to ensure that they are able to support what we have in our network. So, since we are a mobile operator, our effort is we configure dual stack configuration. So that's the easiest way for us. Of course, since dual stack, as mentioned also by my co-speakers here, there are other contents that are still not available through IPv6. So that's why we consider the dual stack configuration. And also, of course, a lot of consumers, users right now, they do not mind what's behind the technology, right? They do not mind if we deploy IPv6 or IPv4. So what's important to them is they have a fast, reliable connectivity to view those contents. So the statistics from APNIC here shows, as you can see, since the beginning of our launching, March 2021, our IPv6 capability is already at 60%, 60 to 70% up to now. So hopefully soon, we'll be able to reach about 90 to 100%. But the question is when? When will that happen? Especially here in the Philippines. Here in the, there's a slow deployment of IPv6 here in our country. So in conclusion, our story showcases our commitment to provide our customer with a best possible network experience, while also preparing our network for the future. So, despite the challenges that we have faced, we see this as a one-time investment, and we see the benefits of IPv6 far more than the investment that we made. So IPv6, they say it's a future protocol, but no, IPv6 is already a protocol for today. So, of course, it's not 100% perfect protocol, but we have experts, researchers that can improve a lot of its feature, the security, on how we can provide better performance by deploying IPv6. And of course, to accommodate the number of users worldwide. Because as you know, a lot of users, a lot of devices are very high-tech. So a lot of devices are being deployed. So the number of IPv4 address is getting thinner and thinner. So we need a new one. And that's, we believe, IPv6. So embracing IPv6 is a crucial step towards building a better and more secure internet. And we hope that our experience, what we share here, will encourage organizations to enable IPv6 within their network. So that's our short story on how DITO come up with IPv6 deployment.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. I believe most of the operators have very similar challenge as you had. And any question from the floor? Or any question online? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to thank you, Mohammed, again, and there's some gift for you. Okay. that's pretty much end of the section. As I mentioned earlier, basically the session is to encourage the operator sharing. Any question on front row? Okay, your name and organization again.
Hi, my name's Dave Dawson. I'm with the APNIC Foundation. I just wanted to take this opportunity to let everyone know that our IPv6 deployment grants are open for applications. They're open to pretty much any kind of organization that has some concrete plans that they're working on to deploy IPv6 for community benefit. So please check out our website, isif.asia, or if you see me around the conference, feel free to come and say hi, and I'm happy to chat with you about them. Just wanted to let everyone know while I got the chance. Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. So welcome to submit your application for the grant and specific for IPv6 deployment. And as I mentioned, the section is specific to encourage operators sharing their experience and what challenge they experienced and what kind of technology or what kind of solution they deploy. And also try to find a way to have a new customer acquisition as well. So thanks again for all operators willing to contribute your experience and your knowledge to the flow. And before I end of section, can we give a big hand to all speakers here? Okay, thanks again for your participation. I conclude the section adjourned here. Thank you. Good photo.
Just one glass in, you're already on my mind. When it gets late, I always realize that I need you. Are you thinking about me too tonight? It's no secret, all my friends already know. There's no reason to hold it back, I let it show. All my feelings, are you thinking about me too tonight? Your hands around my waist, just let the music play. Like a drug, I am hooked on you. Sweeter than summer wine, baby, just hold me tight. Like a drug, I am hooked on you. And that makes me say, oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Goddamn, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Paradise. I'm taking a mental picture in my mind just to keep this moment till the end of time. 'Cause I know that it might be over after tonight. So before I change my mind, your hands around my waist, just let the music play. Like a drug, I am hooked on you. Sweeter than summer wine, baby, just hold me tight. Like a drug, I am hooked on you. And that makes me say, oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Goddamn, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Paradise. Bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Goddamn, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Paradise. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Goddamn, I think I'm gonna lose my mind. Oh man, you make it feel like paradise. Paradise. Bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me. If it's only for tonight, it's bittersweet, give it to me.
Lay your eyes, something real nice. Go too hard, couple of times. Find the one, will I see a light? Turn around, come to terms with the fire, you're still mine. All of this time, past like nothing, changing your mind. Face keep blushing, looking at mine. Come around, girl, come to terms with the fire, you're still mine. I just wanna see you live life. You just wanna lay down like you already forgot about the price. If you're charging you per night, yeah. Cash in hand, you be jumping at first. As if I would catch you now. I know you know I'm still in your thirst. And it is you don't lay your eyes, somewhere real nice. Go too hard, couple of times. Find the one, will I see a light? Turn around, come to terms with the fire, you're still mine. All of this time, past like nothing, changing your mind. Face keep blushing, looking at mine. Come around, girl, come to terms with the fire, you're still mine. Little salt in the boom from the cradle. Make it hard, staying true, like some potato. Have it pop like you do with the yayo. If it a hit, I need to quit, no, if it's fatal. You ain't fooling anybody with that chain on. It's so obvious that you still put your game on. When you see me heat up like you lift the flame on, it's a shame cause the pain always falls on you. Signs, but I couldn't run then. I don't blame myself, couldn't see it coming. I know now, that's how they do it. They drag you in, just to leave you feeling stupid. Don't call me up, I know you know what you did, so I'm turning the radio up. Don't wanna hear it's too late for apologize. Lately I've realized that what goes around comes back around. What goes around comes back around. You should never have to make excuses for his behavior towards you, the one he loses. I know they seem to understand now, but they will never change, no matter how hard you try. Don't call me up, I know you know what you did, so I'm turning the radio up. Don't wanna hear it's too late for apologize. Lately I've realized that what goes around comes back around. What goes around comes back around. Looks so pretty on the outside, took a chance on a good thing. Yeah, now I got you on my right wing. Making love, now it's casual. And you text me in the morning, you're available. Am I dreaming? Can't believe I forgot for this feeling. Finally found the one in my life that I wanna be.
Baby, baby, you never really touched me lately. I get the feeling you're just not that into me no more. So, tell me, cause I can read your mind, I'm sorry. I need a little invite to your brain, just let me know. This is so confusing, all I feel is useless. Trying to fix a problem you can't admit you wanna fix. Why can't you be truthful? Honesty is crucial. Promise you that I'll be fine, baby, I can take a hint. You don't wanna talk about us, about stuff. And you don't wanna kiss, hold hands, make love. When I say let's break up, you say let's not. So I really, really wanna know what the hell you waiting for. Really, really wanna know what the hell you waiting for. Easy breezy, nobody said that love is easy, but you can go around pretending I'm yours when I'm not. Ooh, help.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. We'll be starting on time in 1 minute. I was expecting a bit more people, but okay. So welcome to this session, and we'll be discussing the update election procedures in the SIG guidelines. It's working. Okay, problem statement. During the community elections held at APNIC 54, anomalies were observed in the conference registration list and in patterns of online participation. An analysis of the data showed that there was no impact on the APNIC 54 SIG elections. However, APNIC 44 registration and attendance data did indicate significant potential for manipulation of the existing rules and procedures in future elections. A high number, 291, of questionable registrations from a single organization was notable, as the suspect registrations will be entitled to vote in future elections under current rules. This may be interpreted as a manipulation of election rules in an attempt to dominate future elections. The implications are significant. SIG elections normally attract 50 to 100 votes. Therefore, an organized voting bloc of 250 plus would determine election results in futures. The difficulty of confirming the identity of voters indicate a further vulnerability to SIG elections. Prior to online election, all SIG voting was in person at a conference, so voters' identity could be confirmed. What I'm trying to here is to ensure the integrity of APNIC SIG elections. Situation in other regions. Each region uses a different method for electing or appointing community representative. What we are proposing. The SIG guideline document the procedures for SIG elections. It's available on APNIC website. We will replace sections 3.3, 3.4, 3.41, 343, 345, and 37 in the SIG guidelines with the following text. 3.3, criteria for election. If more than one nomination is received by the closure date, an election must be held. If there's only one candidate, the candidate will be elected via acclamation in the SIG meeting room or standing ovation or whatever. 3.4, election procedures. Election will use the same online voting system as APNIC EC or NRNC elections. 3.4.1, nominations. Nominations are managed by the APNIC Secretariat. Any individual residing within the Asia-Pacific service region may be nominated, except for staff member of any regional internet registry. Individuals cannot hold more than one elected position, EC, SIG, or NRNC. Those who are elected to a new position must resign from any other currently held EC, SIG, or NRNC position as soon as practicable, but no later than 30 days following the election. Self-nomination are permitted. Nominees must meet the same eligibility criteria as the voters in section 3.4.3. Nominees will be invited to provide a recorded video candidate statement to be published on the conference website. 3.4.3, voting eligibility. Each APNIC member organization is entitled to cast one vote during the times noted in the SIG election timetable. Online voting entitlements for members' organizations are only available to those individuals who are corporate contacts, authorized contact with voting right given by the corporate contact. In-person attendees at APNIC conferences are also eligible to vote in SIG elections. A conference attendee must meet the following criteria to vote: registered and attending the current conference in person. The attendee must be checked in at the registration desk at any time from the start of the conference until 10 a.m. local time for the conference. Sorry, too fast. On the final day of the conference. Registered and attended in person or online at least one of the immediate past 8 apricot or APNIC conference, not included the current one. Eligible registered attendees will vote online in the SIG elections and will be entitled to one vote each. Verification of any individual entitlement to vote against official records will be used as when. There is no proxy voting at SIG elections. APNIC staff and other IRR staff are ineligible to vote. 3.4.5, voting period. Online voting for APNIC members and eligible registered conference attendees will open 2 hours after the start of the APNIC conference and will close at the end of the lunch break on the last day of APNIC conference before the start of the AMM. 3.7, removing a chair or a co-chair. If a SIG chair or co-chair does not attend one in every 2 APNIC conferences and does not attend the SIG forum held at the APNIC conference, the APNIC EC will have discretion to remove the chair or co-chair from their role. The process of electing a replacement will then begin. If SIG members do not think that the chair or co-chair is sufficiently performing their duties, as described in section 2.3, 2.3.1, and 2.3.2, they can express their concerns on the mailing list or in the OPM or SIG forum. If there's a consensus that the chair or co-chair is not sufficiently performing their responsibilities, the chair or co-chair will be removed by the APNIC EC. The process of electing a replacement will then begin. If an individual holds more than one elected position and does not resign in accordance with section 3.4.1 within 30 days of their election, the APNIC EC has discretion to remove the individual from their elected positions excluding the position for which they were most recently elected. Pros and cons. Advantages. It allows verification of conference attendees as real people who are eligible to vote. It ensures individuals cannot hold multiple community-elected positions to avoid capture of community roles. It clarifies who is responsible for the removal of a chair or co-chair. Disadvantages. Online-only conference participants who are not members are ineligible to vote. The foreseen impact on resource holders is none. As a reference, you can go to the APNIC website and have a look at the SIG guidelines. And that's it for the presentation. If you have any comment or questions, stand up and reach the mic.
Hi, Sienna from APNIC on behalf of Amrita Chowdhury Online. I believe you've covered this, but I'd just like to clarify. The question is voting eligibility. Does this voting eligibility not allow non-APNIC members to vote?
Yes and no. If the person is attending the conference as before COVID, he or she will be able to vote because we can verify he or her identity. If the person is online and is not a member, then no.
Yeah, hi, Gaurav Kansal from National Informatics Center. So if you can go on point number 3.4.5, if you can.
Oh,
yeah, good.
Magic.
So if we talk about elections in APNIC, we used to have three types of elections: EC, NRO, and a SIG. In EC and EC generally in this apricot, and in September event we used to have NRO and SIG. In EC and NRO, we opens the voting period well ahead before the starting of conference, so that APNIC members, eligible APNIC members, can vote. Whereas for SIG, we open the voting period after starting of conference. As we all know, that voting percentage, if you will see in APNIC, at least from last 5 to 7 years, is less than 10%, even in EC. So that means the members, selected members, all selected members are not getting the votes from major community, only the one which are participating. So what my suggestion is, if we can have a voting period of a SIG can be overlapped with NRO EC voting period, so that this I raised on community also, so that every eligible member cannot have to log in twice to vote in SIG. Second point, you talk about situation in other RIRs. So apart from APNIC, in APNIC, we have the voting right for IR and member for members in APNIC, whereas we don't have voting rights in APNIC. So we know that for giving a voting right in APNIC EC, we need a changes bylaws. But yeah, we can think of giving a voting right to NIR members in SIG. These are two humble suggestions.
Thank you. The idea behind all this is to first go back to where we were before COVID, but improve it as well. Before COVID, only people in the room could vote. Now, members online can vote as well. So the timing is, well, it seemed the good thing to do when we talked about it. I understand your point of view. Extending the period.
Are you
not
sure? Are you sure that before COVID, the APNIC members, the one who has IP resources from APNIC were not eligible to vote in SIG?
Oh, they were, provided they were in the room.
Can't they, before COVID, they were not allowed to vote online?
It was just a raise of hand every time.
Okay.
So now it's better.
Okay.
But because of what happened at APNIC 54, we have to make sure that no one will abuse the system.
But those members are voting, having a voting right in APNIC easily. So if they have to abuse the system, they can abuse EC, not a SIG.
No. The current SIG guideline suggests that if you were online, you are eligible to vote. If you were online in previous, now you have to be in the room to vote or to be a member. So it's better than before, and we've closed down the risk of overvoting by members from organization that try to abuse the system.
But I don't think I think I'm not able to explain my point view here. You are saying that APNIC members, the one which are registered with APNIC, having an IP resources, can vote in EC also for a period of 30 or 45 days, whatever period APNIC says.
It's got nothing to do with APNIC EC elections.
No, so you are saying that they can, if you will open a voting right for APNIC members in SIG, they will abuse the system. My point here is, if they have to abuse the system, they can do it in EC elections also. How you will justify this? As per best of my thought processes, APNIC EC is far bigger body or far bigger responsibilities than a SIG or any other election, any other body that APNIC has.
Excuse me. Hello, Craig, APNIC General Counsel. I think you misunderstand the voting criteria. So if you are an APNIC member, you can always vote under this system. What we are talking about, the difference is that for SIG elections, before COVID, you have to be physically present in order to vote. This does not affect an APNIC member who always has the right to vote, whether or not you attend the conference. The difference here is for attendees. So prior to COVID, a person who is present in the room can vote. When we went online, anyone can register for free onto the system and participate in the voting in the second category. I'm not sure if you understand that enough. So the problem in APNIC 54 was that a lot of people registered on our system as attendee and participated in the voting, but we are not confident that they are real people. That was the problem. So the proposed changes here is to ensure that real people vote. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. But remember that the point you were trying to make was that APNIC member can vote always. Now, before, always.
What I just want to say is, I am talking about APNIC members only, not attendees. So what I'm saying is, opens the voting right for APNIC members at the same time when you open the voting right for NRO-NC in September meeting. Why you have two voting right period? This will create a situation like if I'm a member, APNIC member, and I am not attending the APNIC meeting, I have to do a voting. I can do a voting for NRO-NC before conference, and for voting in SIG, I have to wait till the conference. We have a very low voting percentage already in APNIC. So why you are forcing member, a corporate guy, to log in twice to do the voting? They are not even doing it once.
You can log once and vote for both elections.
This is Gaurav. This is here. I think Gaurav, you are misunderstanding the process because you are new in this community. Because 6 years election can happen anytime. It can happen in January, February meeting. It can happen in September. There is no difference, and this is completely separately defined. Sometimes the elections overlap. Sometimes there is 6-year elections in February. Sometimes it is in September. But we basically always have the NRO election in September because the roll starts from December. Right? We can't have that in. That is only the fixed thing. The 6-year elections can happen every time. So there is no need to combine them and make it, there's nothing about that because EC election is separate. It'll always happen in February. EC elections will never happen in September. Right? NRO elections, because they take seat in January, will always happen in September. Right? Even if people resign, we'll not do it in February. But the 6-year elections can happen anytime. There's no requirement that it happens either this or that. If there is a vacancy, the next one, you do the election. That's why it has to be kept separate and not combined with any other kinds of voting. Right? Does that clarify that?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Just a humble request if you can answer my second question also.
What?
Why not give a voting right to NIR members?
I think I believe that Jeremy answered that question earlier. Again, NIR members can come attend a conference and vote. Simple as that. If they are readily involved in the community, they can come, register, vote, right? Today, we don't have a mechanism to give them access online because they are not members of APNIC, right? If NIR members were to get access to APNIC voting, however we do it, again, I think Jeremy answered that on the email. The legal context of that is we don't have a way of allowing them to do that. So, but again, if they are interested, come to the APNIC meeting, participate in the community elections. Nobody's stopping them from doing that.
Yes, I had a comment. I'm Huang from NIR 6-year, and I also sent the email to all the NIR members about the process proposals, and I did not get any comment from NIR. And I see that some NIR at the meeting. If you have any comment, please let us know. And on behalf of NIR from VNIC, yes, I believe that VNIC take part in a lot of APNIC meetings, so we know each other. We know we should choose the right person to the SIG, and also other members from VNIC. They did not have a lot of time to take part in APNIC meetings. So I am not sure they should choose the right person. It basically maybe in the future I don't understand much more, but up to now I believe that our member did not to really inserting to vote sick in APNIC meeting. Yes, thank you.
Sienna.
Amrita Chowdhury is going to ask a question on the screen.
Thank you, Sienna.
Just a point of precision, the 345 is just very, the change is very, very small. It's just online voting for eligible registered attendees have been changed to online voting for APNIC members and eligible registered attendees. So it's exactly as it used to be, plus the APNIC members.
Yoshinobu Matsuzaki, can you go back to 3.4.3, voting eligibility? Yep. So this might be just additional, but it's stating the APNIC member organization. A person can be a member, if I'm correct. So maybe it's better to just state APNIC member there. That's all.
Good point.
Hi, Aftab Siddiqui. Mas said the same thing, and I wanted to say that I am an APNIC member. I am not an organization. So it conflicts, the wording conflicts with that. I am a single person, and which is legal to be an APNIC member. There's nothing illegal about it. So that is probably the word. But the second point I just want to clarify with what Gaurav was saying. the SIG election, importantly, there is the spirit of community that signed SIG. NRO-NC is slightly different. There's a role which is a corporate role we have to function that has a proper function within the APNIC community and at the global ICANN level. So it's a separate role. SIGs it has a very different appeal. You have to be part of the community to represent the community. So that should not be broken, in my opinion. So, and people try to break it, and we need to address that. And that is the most important thing. People not being part of the community should not be involved in making a decision or hijacking it. So that is most important bit we need to understand. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
We're just queuing up Amrita.
Thank you, Shena. Hope I am audible to all. Amrita for the record.
All right. There seems to be a little problem. I've got a comment that I'd like to read out as well from Jahangir Hussain. Only APNIC members should vote for APNIC EC elections through online, either in person. If an APNIC member vote online, then he should not vote in person and vice versa. Other that APNIC members should not be able to vote in APNIC EC election. Now, I believe Amrita's there, but no one can hear her.
Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Sorry, everyone. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. I agree with what Aftab mentioned, and I think we need to distinguish between what a SIG is and what the other elections are. And correct me, chairs, if I'm wrong. Normally, to be associated with a SIG, you have to opt for that particular SIG. As a member, you get various services. Even if you're a member, you may opt for it. So obviously, the election processes of the SIG is also slightly different. And I think the changes which are being suggested are agreeable looking at the present times. So yes, I think, though we are talking about election, another thing, when we want members to vote, on a flip side, I would also encourage if members participate in the SIGs much more, which unfortunately does not happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. Simone?
Yeah, this is Huang Sabir from Fabaton. So I just want to talk about the speed of the SIG elections and SIG process, that we used to have a hand up in the room, because in a particular SIG, those who are specifically interested on that, they gathers. And they try to pick someone as a chair or co-chair who has that knowledge and capabilities to doing that. So it's not that remotely voting someone and electing him as a chair without any background doesn't have. That's why actually we prefer who have attended earlier meetings and attended SIG. Even probably we can think about like that those who are voting for SIG election should be member of that particular SIG as well. Otherwise, I'm never going to a SIG meeting and participating in that. But in election time, I was just voting for someone. Probably that can be cost good as well. Thank you.
Yes, that's why the voting period comes in. Because of the short time for the voting period, only people that are really interested in the SIG will log on and cast their vote. If they're able to vote for 2 weeks prior to the SIG forum or OPM, then it's going to be a completely different matter.
Just for the record, Amrita Chowdhury online agrees with Sumon.
Thank you.
This is Gaurav Pade. I think what Suman and Amrita said is worth considering. Like, I think, Online voting is all through my APNIC, and you could basically add some checks to say if the person voting is actually part of the mailing list or part of the SIG, or has indicated prior interest in it or not, so that you need to be involved and be there. And I don't know if that is easy to add, but that could be very simple feature to be added.
It's easy to add it to the text, but is
Doing
it
the work,
easy for Secretariat to check that? I don't know. I'll have to ask Secretariat.
Do it. I mean, build it.
Sunny Chendi from APNIC. Currently, no, it's not easy because because email address and we don't capture the names in the system. But if we have to do it, we have to do it.
Aftab Siddiqui. Just to clarify, I mean, I don't remember we ever, I mean, before the online system, before the pandemic, we ever did election scrutiny of SIG ever, right? So is there any provision to have a proper election scrutiny, having an election chair for the SIGs, or a scrutiny mechanism inbuilt moving forward? Because now we are adding online one, because this is what Gaurav suggested is part of a scrutiny, to build a proper mechanism where we can check it.
Actually, we did have a couple of the issues in the past, even with SIG.
Oh, okay.
As I said, I've been around very, very long time. So we had a few, but I think when we went with the online system, the scale of that was just, very different, right? Because in the previous case, you have to actually bring people into the room and do something like that. So it was very easy, and people would be a lot more careful with that because it was pretty obvious. And it has happened a couple of times. And so, but it was obvious. And I think back then we agreed that the community took care of it, because it's not easy to hide behind a screen somewhere. And I think this extra scrutiny is probably because it is easier to game it now, right? But the spirit has always been the SIG will take care of itself, right? So I don't think we need to have an election chair or complicate it further, but adding online features probably would be, people in the room can always vote, like they can sit there and do it, right? That does not change, right? So okay. Just had to correct the record for you.
Comment from Jahangir Hussain online. Aside, as APNIC SIG election and further policy processes relevant matter reflected with APNIC structure, then it should be the right for APNIC members only through online and in person. The comments are all up to date.
Hi, good evening. This is Anupam. So I think if the intent here is, the intent here was when this policy was there, that if somebody is not engaged, the community will not vote for them. So it was pretty simple that it was left to the community to vote for someone who is engaged or not. Now, just capturing the name of the person and seeing whether or not they are part of the mailing list, that really doesn't subscribe to the idea of engagement. So how will the engagement be considered if that is the intent here, that things are getting hijacked and the engagement should be the criteria? Then just having a name in the mailing list possibly is not the only solution. Thank you.
You're right. So maybe we should just go back as it was before COVID. Just people in the room will be allowed to vote and to be elected. And that's it. So no more hybrid system.
Sunny from APNIC again. Well, we had an issue with that one as well a couple of times. And that's why we moved to going back is, I don't think it's a good solution.
Let me add something. The thing is, I think, I like the progress to be made, but coming back to what Anupam was saying, IETF has some of that rules where unless you are on a mailing list for a period of time, you can't really participate in the working group chair elections and a whole bunch of rules around it. I haven't kept up with it for a while now, but those things have been practiced in our community in the past, if we want to look into that. Not for 6 years.
Hello, Craig again. This proposal has been on the table for quite a while. It's been through the mailing list, etc. It is trying to address a real problem. And the real problem, I think, as Aftab has said, is that we are trying to stop our system from being gamed, and to ensure that when we have an election, it is actually the will of the community that is interested in this area, and not by people trying to hijack our system. If there's anything that I can suggest that, and the second point I want to make in relation to what Aftab said about scrutiny, etc. I think it will be our job to make sure that we have checks and balances within the system as we do. The fact that we called out the election of the NROEC, the ASOAC last year is because we have an auditing system that we can detect anomalies. And it was because of that we are now talking about this. So the point is that we will be building, we already have systems to detect anomalies, and we will be building further systems to check, to make sure that we don't have anomalies. But in relation back to this proposal, I would suggest that as the core of what you're proposing, if you think that this will address the immediate problem, then this should kind of be decided now, rather than trying to tinker around with the edges. But if there are further improvements, then of course the facility is always there for there to be further changes as you practice it. But that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And if it's in 343, we have verification of individuals entitled, never get this word correctly, entitlement to vote against official records will be used where necessary. So if there's something weird, then APNIC Secretariat can look into it and check why so many people have been voting this time and or not.
Just to echo with what just Craig said, that yeah, we proposing different options now, but it has been discussed for a long time, and probably should do something now. And there's always scope to improvement. And I agree with Craig. Thank you.
Yeah, perfection is not of this world. So if no one has any more comments, I will call for consensus. No more comments. So those strongly supporting this modification, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those supporting this proposal, this modification to the SIG guidelines, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those who are neutral to these changes, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those who are in opposition with these changes, please raise your hands. and those who are strongly in opposition. And if you are, you will have to have space to speak. Please raise your hand. Thank you all. That was easy. So we have a consensus for these modifications to be put in place as soon as practicable. I would like to thank you all for joining this session. Any other words? Nope. Aftab.
Yeah, Aftab Siddiqui. I just want to thank all the SIG chairs and the co-chairs and everyone who participated in it, because it was a lengthy process. I've seen the amount of effort all of you have put in. So thank you to everyone and all the other SIG chair and co-chair and others SIG chair and co-chair who participated in it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Aftab. So now there's room for improvement, and that can make a proposal for the next OPM session. Well, not the next one, but the one in September. Thank you all. Well done. And